All right, welcome back to the Spewak Training Podcast, and today I'm really excited because I'm bringing on Coach Stults, who is going to be introducing a new segment of the podcast. It's going to be called the Steady State Running. We'll call it Steady State Running, Danny Stults, Coach's Corner / whatever we want to call it. Maybe you guys will help us with developing the second piece to it, but we are fired up about this. As you guys have known, we've been doing the podcast now. We're over 10 episodes in, and it's been really exciting just to be able to interview all these just different amazing athletes that we work with. And one thing is that it's one of those things where we really enjoy being able to interview our runners and talk about their success. But we also want to have a platform in our own podcast to give a little bit more about coaching advice and different things that, hopefully that will be beyond just the inspiration of hearing somebody's story of, hey, I trained for this race and I broke 4 hours in the marathon. Well, how do you do that? And how do you get to those pieces? And sometimes in those episodes, we don't get to really get into the nitty gritty, philosophy talk and things like that. And so I thought no better person on our coaching staff than Danny Stults, who's here with me today. Danny, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Mark. Yeah, thanks for having me. Very excited to start hosting some of these podcasts. We're going to attempt to bring in some people that are a little bit further away from our Spewak training world and venture out into some different discussions about coaching, but just running in general. I think we had a great opportunity that might really interest some of our listeners, just some different topics. So, yeah.
Well, I always say, Danny, if you spend 5 minutes with Danny, you're going to be more inspired than you were before you actually met him. He has had such a positive impact on my life and so many different people, in my circle. And we kind of go back to, I'd say it was like 2012, I think, is when we.
It was, exactly. Yeah.
It was like he had just moved to St. Louis, had taken a job over at Big River Race Management, and we got connected there. I worked at the store, and I just remember, you had been coaching at Oklahoma State, which is obviously, such a powerhouse in running. And when I was at that age, I think I was like in 2012, I was probably like 19 years old at that time. So, running at that point was everything in my life. And so to hear that this guy was, coming off of a national championship coaching staff, I remember just texting all my friends being like, yo, guess who I ran with today? This is insane. And being able to develop a friendship. But something that I really admire about Danny, and I think what's going to be fun about just hearing him talk and his philosophy is that, he was somebody that obviously achieved his own success in running and then obviously achieved coaching, at a very high level, when he coached collegiately. But he always really did an amazing job just connecting to the everyday person. He could inspire somebody who is more of a first-time runner all the way to somebody who's obviously trying to train and qualify for the Olympics. And that was something I always took note of working with Danny. And he's just one of those people who just really fire you up and keep you going. I feel like you have such a great way of motivating people, and it. He's not going to yell at you, or he's not really the we'll go back to the story, I think, of working with him because he coached me and really my love for running really reignited working with Danny that first year I was at Big River. Danny was such an inspiration for me, especially in 2012 as I got into my, I would say post-collegiate, competitive running career had kind of really started. And he was just so encouraging to me. And I think what was so cool was that you have this person who's this extremely successful coach, runner himself, and he was investing so much time in me. And he would spend, hours with me logging tons of miles. We were actually neighbors in Brentwood Forest. He was pretty much my inspiration to move to Brentwood Forest because he was living there, but I don't think I told him that at the time. But just in addition to that, I think what was so cool is that you were at my races, you were encouraging me to keep going. And I never forget, and this is probably my favorite coaching moment working with you, is you had Darwin and I, shout out Darwin Price, we were working at Ladue Track and we were doing a tempo. I think I did a 4-mile tempo out there, and I ran like 21:30 or something for a tempo, and just absolutely crushed this workout. And you told me the time I needed to hit, and you were like, hey, you got to do this. This is what I believe you can do. And at that time, I've run some times, on the road that would, say that I could do a workout there, but I didn't really 100% believe it. And I went out there and I absolutely crushed it, and you were so fired up. And that was that genuine belief that I could do something is why I think I was able to pursue that at, this new level of running.
Yeah, I've been really, really fortunate in the fact that I've been able to run for and work for a lot of really, really excellent coaches, some of the best coaches in the world. And a lot of people that I've worked with or run with have just kind of molded my beliefs and how to approach it over time. And the major takeaway, especially nowadays with like AI prominence and things like that, is it's really easy to get a training plan, right? It's really, and it's fun to write training plans. That's one of my favorite pieces is writing training plans. But what applies to all of the great coaches that I've worked with, Darren Gossman, who's now in New Mexico. I worked with him at Bradley. Dave Smith at Oklahoma State. Eric Hines coached me. Miles Krieger. Coach Weiss at Oklahoma State, who sadly passed away this year, was one of the best coaches I ever met. But a ton of great coaches, even beyond that. Everyone adapts over time, and it's more about the adaptation year to year, person to person, team to team, day to day. And all the great coaches, in my opinion, are really, really good at that.
And so when we were working together at Big River, you were obviously timing races and you were still involved, with coaching. Obviously, you coached myself, you coached some friends. But what I remember so much about this time period was that you were coaching and you were working in the industry, but then you were also doing, like, we would do some videos, where you would share your philosophy. And a lot of it was some video, but we also did a lot of blogging. And I know that you had a blog, and it was Steady State Running. And that was the gist of it. And that's obviously what you actually ended up having us, where we have a singlet called Steady State Running. I think it was you had a friend at Brooks or something at the time, and we had singlets. But can you share a little bit more about, like, that time period and Steady State Running and why that still applies to you today? Because that's obviously the inspiration of this kind of segment for this podcast.
Yeah. So Steady State Running comes from, I did my undergraduate at Southeast Missouri State, where I ran for Eric Hines and Miles Krieger. One of my best friends of my life I met down there. But we had a road that we tempoed on that we called Steady State Road, and it was kind of curved like an S. And it was unique in the sense that you'd go tempo it, but the terrain varied so much, it was really hard to find a rhythm. And I thought that applied really well to kind of everyday life, in the sense of you're trying to find this steady state, but the conditions are constantly changing. So you're constantly being forced to adapt. And that made sense to me in terms of running as well. Like I said, with the adapting day to day, your job as an athlete is simply to do what you got to do every day to keep moving forward. Your job as a coach is to zoom out and look at the big picture and make sure we're headed the right direction. So the idea behind Steady State back then was sort of that overarching belief, or modus operandi, however you want to say it. So back then, when you and I were kind of dabbling in that, I was interested in getting something going. And I think, to be honest, I just wasn't at a point in my life where I could invest enough into it. And I think I was also a little bit early, in the sense of, I'm not an influencer. I wasn't a run influencer. I didn't know how to make videos that were catchy and appealing. We were trying to promote ourselves, but what for? So yeah, it was a unique time, but it did kind of plant the seeds for this modern day running boom, in the sense of it didn't plant the seeds for the boom itself, but it applies now. I think if we were in a different position now, it would have worked. So
yeah, it was interesting because I think that you definitely had an audience, and there were definitely people that wanted to hear the message. And like you said, like, the strategy on social media was just so different than, I think a lot of it was driven by Facebook. You were kind of captivating your audience of the people you kind of already knew on Facebook. I think this whole world of like TikTok, I think, is such a great example. You can post something on TikTok now, and it can reach people all over the world in a way that none of your posts on Facebook could have at that time.
Right.
In early day Instagram. And so, like you said, the process of what you were putting out there, I think you were doing it for the love of the sport and the game, and being able to have that resume booster for you that you could share that knowledge to. And it influenced people in a different way. I think nowadays so much of this, like, social media influencer game is to promote that person's, and this isn't a knock on them, but I think it's more to promote their brand. And I mean, we do it in the sense that we're trying to promote people to buy coaching, at Spewak Training. But I think it's different in the sense that, like, there's the kind of doing it for the influencing, and then there's doing it because you absolutely love running and you love talking shop, and I think that was what was fun about it.
That's the difference now, is it's so much easier. It's so much more effective, social media, of sharing that message and getting that out. And I think that we as coaches, and coaches in general, should not discredit the value of what we provide and the value of how we can connect with people. And that's actually one of the beautiful things And one of the dark things about social media right now is that people can share whatever they want. And it's really easy to go down a rabbit hole and to be, like an example would be, I'm a new runner and I'm learning about double threshold, and baby, I got to do that. When the reality is it probably doesn't make sense, but you're exposed to so much more. It's a great way to spread your message. It's just, I think you've got to have the ability or people around you to help rein that in. And that's kind of, I think, what's really difficult for people that get into running. I know I'm going on a tangent, but they get into running at an older age, or later in life, is you may not have a social network that kind of helps you queue up. Whereas one of the positives of running in high school, and you speak volumes of this with a really successful high school team. I helped out with the team here in Springfield the last couple of years with Coach Cotner. He does a great job, but he runs a great system that develops people. And that system's awesome because it teaches you what works, how to develop. And then once you go to college, you're either hopefully not going to go to another system, but you're going to go to a place that develops you individually. But you're set up and you know these basic foundations. Whereas when you get hit with that TikTok about, I take my bicarb 3 hours before my race, I do my double T, and then I do my glute activations, you may not fall into a trap. Whereas someone without that social experience and sort of running age development may. So,
and would you say it's fair to kind of say that when it comes to your philosophy, simplicity, is I didn't say that right.
Yeah.
Simplicity is kind of more at the forefront from where you're at with things when we're in a day and age now where you go on social media, there's a checklist, like you said, biocarb and super shoes, and you have the right nutrition, all the rest of those things. And, you obviously have coached people at the highest level and you've had success, with your own running at a very high level. And you didn't, not that those things wouldn't have benefited you when you were coaching 10 years ago, 20 years ago and running. But at the same time, the athletes aren't changing too much. We have a little bit more, but we almost are getting away from, what makes us so great.
Yeah. And I saw something this week that I thought was really interesting. It was Galen Rupp commented on bicarb and super shoes. And he says, I believe I would have really benefited from that. And his comment went to the fact that he was one of the best athletes in the world for a long time. And he probably would have run faster with those technologies. And so the point being is that times are kind of relative in a sense, but like you said, athletes are really the same. It's more about, in my belief, it's more about not being necessarily super simple with how we approach it, but I want to make sure that no matter what we do today, we can do what we need to do tomorrow. And that's really a struggle individually. I struggled with that massively the last couple of years with injuries because it's so easy for me to fall into what worked in the past. And I know I talked a ton about adaptation, and here I am myself. I need someone to tell me to pump the brakes. But the name of the game is simply developing a plan that we're both comfortable with, or we're all comfortable with, and then making sure that each day we're not threading the needle too far right or left to where we're not doing too little, not doing too much. But then when you package it all together, you can see that you're moving the direction you want to move. So I really just think it's about balancing day-to-day needs. It's about balancing daily life. Obviously, the best runners in the world are going to be hyper fixated on running. They're going to do it a lot more than the average marathoner, and they should. They're probably getting paid. But the reality is that the rest of us, there comes a balance, and there's a time to push, and there's a time to not push. So.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. So as you guys know, the Market Mile is a big part of the Spewak training and Spewak racing community. This will be our third year for this race. It is on Sunday, August 9th. We are really looking forward to bringing people downtown to celebrate the amazing city of St. Louis and our 4 nonprofit partners, which are Backstoppers, Boys and Girls Club, Peter and Paul Community Services, and Great Rivers Greenway. 1 mile, Keener Plaza to the Union Station. Huge party afterwards. 4 Hands sponsors with beer. We'll have Caldy's Coffee and several awesome vendors. So thanks so much for the support these last several years. And if you want to sign up, please visit marketmilestl.com. You can get registered today. Now back to the podcast. Yeah, it is so interesting. And I think that's what's going to be really fun about you diving into this podcast is, you can find guests and, take this segment to that next level to be able to kind of talk about these things that, can obviously enhance your running, but then also weighing the pros and cons of, what's going to benefit this person, what does this person need? How do you adapt? How do you deal with injuries? I think there's so many levels. And that's what I was saying kind of earlier is that, we almost sometimes, especially like with our coaching business, we've been fortunate to have a lot of success. And so we're basically posting success every single day on social media, which is awesome. And I think it's a high endorsement of our program, when you're able to get on there and say, these people reach their goals. But we're not always, and we try to, obviously, in our posts to share, the journey and things like that. But we don't really have that opportunity to really kind of talk through, what that took and what that looked like. And I think that's what will be fun for you is that you can really dive into the process of how this looked for these people. And it kind of is a good segue a little bit to what you're doing now, because you obviously coached, Division I collegiately for several years, and you've had the opportunity now to join Coach Noah Dahm, who's also on our coaching staff. Shout out Noah. If you're looking, if you're a collegiate high school athlete looking for a great program over there, check out Blackburn College in Carlinville, Illinois. But you're now on his staff, and you're coaching at a totally different level. Division III, the priorities are going to be school first, and not that obviously academics wasn't important at the Division I level, but you're recruiting a kid that's looking for the college experience. They're looking for the opportunity to still compete in sports, but have a life outside of it. And now you're coming to it with your knowledge and your background, and almost learning probably to coach a totally different athlete.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good way to put it. It's been a very, very positive experience in the sense that it's allowed me to kind of step back my intensity in terms of how I approach the day to day. It's not that I don't want to win. We want to win at Blackburn, and we're getting better every year. It's more so that my day to day involvement has been pulled back to a healthy level because Noah's the head coach and he's doing a great job, and he's leaning on me for certain things, which I'm happy to help him with. And we've got this really kind of quality and stable back and forth where we can lean on each other when we need it. And then in addition to that, we have a great staff in general. We have an excellent throws coach who joined us last year, Coach RC. Colleen Cash, who ran to Indiana State, is helping out with the distance as well. She was a state runner-up in Illinois. And then we've got Tyrese Reed helping out with the sprints right now. And he was an excellent national level sprinter at Knox College, as well as a football player. So we've got this really well-rounded group of people that all have quality experience, care, and want to do well. And then we've got this group of athletes who we've been pitching it to in the sense of, would you like an opportunity for starters? Yeah, well, that's great. We're going to give you an opportunity, but we'd really like you to come here only if you want to improve and get better, because this is a priority for us. It should be for you. And we're fortunate to have a group of people like that. So I guess back ending into the question you asked me in terms of learning how to coach different people, it's not really that my philosophies had to adjust. My expectations are still quite high for the team. It's been more so of balancing it with the athletes in general. Their like athletic history is typically pretty different from athletes that I've worked with. So the developmental range can really take off with some small, subtle adjustments versus where I may not have seen that at other levels. And then what's really been fun is, especially on our girls' side, is a little bit of investment, a little bit of buy-in. They really, really improve, and they've done really, really well. So it's really just been kind of reframing my own thought process for myself versus reframing how I approach the day to day.
Well, and I think when you think about coaching, and this is what's fun about what we do with coaching adults, is that we're not really necessarily recruiting. Obviously, our advertising, our marketing from this is recruitment in itself, and people get referred here. But we're not going and calling, prospective Boston Marathon qualifiers on the phone and being like, "Hey, you joined Spewak training. We're going to take you to the next level. Give us 4 years." So it's totally different. But to do what we do, you have to be really good at being able to work with a wide variety of different athletes. You can't just be one-dimensional in the sense of like, oh, I can only help somebody get really fast at the mile. And that's what makes this world of adult coaching so much harder in some aspects of it. And you probably see that same way. And so you've learned how to coach the sprints. At the last few years, you've coached distance. I mean, your versatility is absolutely incredible, and that's got to open, so many different doors and probably given you more knowledge than you did even when you were at the Division I level.
Yeah, and that's a great point, actually, and that's something that I think applies to our athletes and almost every athlete in general. Is if you can become a more well-rounded athlete, you're probably going to be a better runner, especially if you're moderately training. And I'll say moderately and know that that's a loaded statement, but it's like if, I've worked with, you have as well. We've worked with people who've run 110-mile weeks, and that's a lot of mileage. They may not get as much out of, an afternoon playing pickleball and working on explosive movements and side to side. Whereas what we found especially with the sprints crew, this has taught me a lot with sprints and jumps, is the value of plyometrics, the value of wickets, the value of just kind of having fun at practice a little bit more, and making them more well-rounded. They tend to perform better at the meets. Whereas on the mid-distance side, you probably need a little bit more of what we would call a traditional training plan. But yeah, I found ways to incorporate even just playing basketball in the off season and things like that into our training. And it's really, really expanded my perspective on how to approach it. So
with steady state running, now being able to take, this philosophy and platform that you've already had, and then putting this into the podcast form here with our Spewak training podcast, like what would you say that you want people to get the most out of it?
Yeah, I just want to offer a form of entertainment. I would like, in the sense that people will enjoy listening to what we're putting out, but they're also getting something out of it in terms of learning. Like I'm in my truck a lot, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I find that novelty is almost worth more than the information on some level, in the sense that I want to enjoy the people I'm listening to. And there's a lot of podcasts out there that have great information that's so dense it's hard to get to. So what I'm really hoping to do is bring people on, speak myself in a manner that people enjoy, but we're also going to provide maybe different perspective, maybe discuss things that you may not normally have looked at. Like, it'd be great to expand our Spewak training audience and get them a little more involved in just enjoying and understanding like the NCAA experience. Like, it'd be great to talk about, the national track meets at every level. Division III is great. It's fun. So just kind of expand that. And then we'll obviously talk about like big marathons, talk about what's happening in the running scene worldwide, and and then get other people's perspective on all of it. So.
No, I love that. And I think that that's one thing where, this is a sport that I feel like people can be very disconnected from the actual sport of track and field and cross country. And obviously, like the Olympics, it gets us all excited. And admittingly, like, I don't follow professional running the same way that I used to. I think when you're competing at the collegiate level or you're younger, it's one of those things where you're not completely out of the realm of being a professional, even though I didn't think I was going to be a professional runner, but it inspires you and you watch it. And not that it doesn't inspire you now, it just, priorities change, your life goes on. And so it's one of those things that I wish I knew more about it. And when I hear things about it, and then I hear people's experiences, it only fires me up more. So I think about that for so many people who haven't even had the experience of even knowing about it. If they can tap into this podcast and hear the experiences from these different athletes or yourself, like, and sharing this thing, it will only help us grow this sport more. I mean, I think about, you think about Ben Rosario, I always said like, he's somebody that I feel like he could have stood on a bench in the side of the corner of a park anywhere in America and just scream, and preach about running. Like, he would be the one that would do it. The guys outside Busch Stadium talking about religion, he would do it for distance running. And that's just how passionate he is. And I see you as like that same kind of person, like passionate for this sport and helping us expose that to new people.
Yeah. Well, the most beautiful thing about it is that success is so relative in running, and improvement is valuable for everyone, right? But it's also really, really cool in the sense that, like you said, when you're in college, you could race against an NCAA champion in the middle of the season. They're going to be on the same results list as you. They're going to be on the same descending order list. We don't get that as much post-collegiately. They do in the UK with all the club systems. Like, they do the club system great. We do the collegiate system really well. Maybe a crossover would be the perfect ideal system. But really, as like post collegiates, the only time we're racing against really, really high level people is at marathon majors, and then even then we're probably going to start 5 minutes behind them, if not more. Even if you're running really well, you're not going to be on the same start line. But it's just the disconnect between the top, the elite, the sub elite, and the really good is the range is so wide. But the coolest part about it is you're all at the same finish line. You're all celebrating the same thing together. And what I was really, I know I shared this with you, but I was really taken back. I ran the Masters 4-mile championship a few weeks back, and it was really hot. To be honest, I wasn't in very good shape, but I was just going to go for it because I was healthy enough to race. And I had time-wise what I considered a pretty rough day. Like I finished and it was kind of like, it was like I was 25-year-old Danny again. And I was like, man, I just ran like crap. We got sixth in the race, which is great. But I ran slow in my own mind. But then I was in the tent and I was actually with one of our St. Louis friends, Mike Aiken, and another athlete. And we were talking about how, hey, we're masters now. Like getting to the starting line is harder and getting to the finish line is even more difficult than that. And that deserves praise, that deserves recognition, that deserves celebration. And I was like, you know what? They're right. Like it's difficult to keep doing this for so long. It's difficult to do it the whole time. But it was just a really fresh, nice reminder of how great the people are that are involved in this sport. And then at the same token, at that finish line, it was also the U.S. Championship 4 miles. So like Drew Hunter and the elites were like right over there, and they're all cool. They're great. So it was just a very nice reminder of how relative the sport is and how much joy can be found in any day that you're able to do it. So
well, and that's an important message to get across because there was actually somebody that reached out to me. She's a newer runner, and she was talking about like just on social media about how like running it's been so difficult. She was an athlete. She doesn't understand why it is so difficult, and it's really hot outside, and I don't think, and all she's following is I can tell like a lot of people in her circle are experienced runners, and so she's comparing herself kind of to these different athletes. And I was trying to encourage her like, hey, you're on your own journey here and you're doing amazing. And on top of it, like it is really hot outside and you're comparing yourself to people who are doing this at a way that they're maybe not necessarily sharing all of the losses. They're sharing a lot of the wins.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so important. We need people like her to be able to access a podcast and access information from people who are successful runners, because newer runners need to hear that it's a journey, it's a process. There's these things that you're going through. And that's what I think we're ultimately trying to achieve at this steady state, segment, is to be able to inspire you and understand that we can connect you to this professional level, but not in an intimidating way, in the sense that, I can't learn anything from them because they're just significantly better. How can we take the resources and leverage the experience that Danny has at this next level to bring that back down? And I think that's why you've obviously been so successful at Blackburn, because you're being able to, pull what you've learned at the highest level, national championship caliber programs, and put that into kids that, maybe never thought there was a possibility to be coached that way. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm fired up about this segment. I don't want to take all of our great ideas out and share them. So you'll have to tune in. Danny Stults on the Spewak training coaching staff, and he's going to be leading this. And we'll have several coming out in the coming weeks and coming months. So thank you, Danny.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Well, this was a great episode with Danny Stults. Super pumped about this new segment, Steady State Running. If you want to follow along, Danny Stults is with our coaching staff here at Spewak Training. Danny, you're also on Instagram. Can you tell us that handle there?
Yeah, so it's hard. It's DSTULTS, and then it's like __. So probably need to change that, but that's what it is.
He's got great content on there. Always a fun follow. Like I said, he's on our website too. You can find out more information on how you can contact him if you're interested in learning a little bit more about his coaching philosophy, or if you have any questions, down the road. And like I said, he's going to be running this segment, and we're really excited just to be able to bring, just a new level, I would say, of energy and knowledge and really just enthusiasm for the sport of running and Spewak training to many new audiences moving forward. And as always, if you want to schedule a free consultation call, please don't hesitate to reach out. It's contact@spewaktraining.com. We're happy to talk to you about your goals and your needs for coaching. And we look forward to sharing more great advice and coaching feedback in the coming weeks.